What's up, and thanks for joining me today for another edition of your favorite podcast in the world, the 1004 Show, where me, Zack Miller, your homeboy, aka your host for the past 95 episodes, and now 96, gets to the bottom of the questions that you're looking for in long-form interviews with people that you might not have ever heard of before, but have amazing stories. Today we have Chris Lane of Chris Lane Video. He's a photographer, an entrepreneur, and someone who creates video content for a living. And in this episode, we're going to talk about how to actually get your video out, how to tell those stories, and what you actually have to do to get video in front of other people. How much money you have to spend. It's probably not as much as you think. It's episode 96 of your favorite show, the 1004 Show. Zack Miller here, Chris Lane on the opposite side. Are you ready? Let's go. Yeah! You helped me put together like my most watched video of all time, at least that I pushed out myself. And so I thought it was important to bring you on the show, and why not have a friend on?
Man, I really appreciate that. And that video was really fun to work on, by the way. Not everyone got to see all the outtakes that I was privy to, but I definitely was laughing out loud. And I work in a co-working space, so people were peeking around the corner like, what is he doing?
Really?
Yeah.
That makes me so happy. Did you put together a video of just outtakes? Because that would be fun.
I did dump the outtakes into its own sequence, but it hasn't made it to an exported video yet.
Wow, it's like Christmas and whatever month it is. Like, this is exciting. Like, wow. I remember waiting for this video, and I hadn't been excited about it because if you guys haven't seen the video yet, it's the video of me announcing Anomaly, the book I wrote, and so I asked Chris to do it, and like when you called me once and were like, hey, I need to work on this longer, it got me even more like, oh, it's like Christmas morning, and then it's like 4 o'clock, and then 5 o'clock, and then it's like 6 o'clock, and I'm like, I just want to see it, right? And like, I've learned to train myself to not get excited about things like that. And so, do you do that? Does that happen a lot with your clients? Like, people get super excited?
Yeah, people definitely get excited because a lot of times it's the biggest thing that's on their plate at that moment. And so but the person you hired to do your video, that may be like one of 4 or 5 projects that they're in the middle of, and they want to give their full attention to your project, and they don't want to send you something that's half finished, because then you're going to start critiquing based on where the project is when they send it to you, where the editor might be like, man, if I had 1 more hour, I could have just finished all my thoughts I had, and then their critiques probably would have been totally different. So that's what I was getting at with you. I was like, I can send him what I have, and it isn't a finished state, but I've got a couple more ideas I want to polish out and try before I get it to him.
Give me an example of what's something that was there and then you made better.
Sure. So a lot of it is just movement of text or movement of images. So we had a couple images, like when we referred to what an anomaly was, like Michael Jordan and Chick-fil-A and aliens. And at first, those were just like a still image that I slapped on there. But given more time, I was able to go find an animation of Chick-fil-A, make the Michael Jordan image move a little bit, have the alien pop up. And that's just a little bit more exciting than still picture, still picture, still picture. So you lay out everything just to get your storyline out. And if you're short on time, you just go with that. But if you have extra time, which is why I called you, I was like, hey, can I mess with this? Then you can get some of those little details, make them a little more fun.
Well, I appreciate that. And, I was going to edit the video, but I was like, you know what? Like, this could be important. A lot of people could potentially watch this. I'm gonna make this okay. I would have done probably 70% of what you did. Right? It would have just been there, like the bars would have just been bloop, and then, you made that a lot more exciting. And I think that's important. Like, a lot of people are terrified to outsource things, or a lot of people are afraid to, hire someone to do something that they might not be good at. And to me, it's like, this is what you're the best in the world at, right? You're probably the best in the world at editing or shooting video. Like, let's have him do it to make sure that I look good in a place where I need to do that. So Video is important. It's getting bigger and bigger. Like, what are your thoughts on this? What's the state of video to you?
I mean, if you just look anywhere, it's exploding, right? There's so much content being created every day that I know for me, I can't even keep up with all the people I subscribe to on YouTube because they're all pushing out so much content that if I just paid attention to what they were doing, I would get nothing done. Um, but the tools to create excellent video are also becoming way more accessible. So, like you said, it makes sense to outsource, but you're no novice. I mean, you have a background in photography, you know how to edit video. So there's this part of you that's thinking, I can just do this myself. I can save myself some money. I can get it done exactly the way I want. But you're so focused on your content and the things that you want to say that telling them well or in having the best edit possible takes a back seat to you trying to get more content out. Um, so you might, while you might be inclined to do it yourself, there's a part of you that sounds like this that's thinking it's better for me to outsource this. And I think that's a dilemma that everyone has because the tools are so accessible. Things price wise have come down so much, whereas great video production used to cost a fortune.
I've seen some people that are doing podcasts and videos, and I'm the first to say, and I think you'll actually agree with this, just get the content out there, right? Because oftentimes people are terrified, like, well, I don't know how good this video is going to be, or I want to get my message out, but and so I always just say, like, just start doing it, right? If you feel comfortable in that medium, start doing it, and once you get better and you have a better following, then you could start investing the money that you've made on these things onto people like you, right? Because then you don't want to get someone that's like about how to that's all, folks, right? That's what will happen. And I remember the first time you ever shot something with me, you were like, "You're done? Like you're done?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like we're done." Like, what else do you want me to say? Like, not that I'm a professional in that kind of sense, but like I knew what I wanted to say, and so oftentimes I think people would then even go to you. And while I'm not saying if someone isn't good enough not to hire you, they should, but start talking it out beforehand.
I think you're totally right. It is more important to generate the content and get it out there in its most basic form than to try and polish it and polish it and polish it and never get it out. I mean, this isn't a new idea that we're talking about. Everyone that you listen to online is saying that. But then there's also the case that once you've gotten established doing that, you can up your game by concentrating on the visuals and how everything looks.
Yeah, 100% agree. Because honestly, if you can find a following with crappy looking video, those are your early adopters that are the hardest to maybe manipulate in the first place, or get them to not manipulate. They're the hardest people to find in the first place, right? Like finding raving fans. If you can't find that and you're not spending any money, then maybe what you're trying to do with the group that you're trying to do isn't who's looking for it. So you just lose a little bit of time, some space on your cell phone, whatever. Why do you think people are so afraid of that concept?
Of doing it themselves or pushing content? What do you mean specifically?
Yeah, whether it's doing it themselves or not having super polished content.
I think people are really scared of what everyone will think. I think inherently we are all like people pleasers naturally as humans. We want validation from other people. It's just like a natural human trait. So there's this tendency to think that I have to be shown in my best light. I have to have the lighting look great, the camera work look great, and not just the content. But in actuality, anytime you put anything out there, there's going to be people that love it, hate it, think you're silly, think you shouldn't be on sharing your story. And then there's other people that are going to completely relate and say, man, that person is the first person I found that is just like me and going through the same things I'm going through. And they're a few steps ahead of me. I want to know how they got there. I'm going to keep following.
Was that the Noah Kagan for you?
Noah Kagan was definitely one of those people for me. Yeah. Then you introduced me to Noah Kagan, by the way. I had not somehow, I don't know how, I had not heard of him before you.
And so
This was about a year ago or so.
what was it about him that you kind of latched onto?
Initially, it was just this really fresh, punchy, simple way of doing his videos, and I like that. He also has a shaved head, which I immediately related to. And then he also was interviewing Tim Ferriss one time about, hey man, was it difficult for you when you started losing your hair? Or are you shaving your head because you're losing hair, or what? I went through this time. This is Noah saying, I went through this time when started losing my hair and I didn't know what to do. Can you just elaborate on that? And immediately I was remembering when my hair started thinning, because I used to have this huge fro way back in the day. I'll have to show you a senior high school picture sometime. That cannot go public. But uh, anyway, so that was like something that I like went through personally, and he was sharing about it to everyone, and I was like, man, I thought this was just something I would go through on my own, not really talk about. And but there's so much power in that when you like share your vulnerabilities as well as your strengths. That's when people really are like, I connect with this person because he's not just telling me how great he is at everything all the time, but he's giving me a place to personally connect.
That's good. Sharing vulnerabilities and their strengths. That's powerful in itself. And I think that's where people gravitate to, right? There is something on my Kickstarter page, and it'll probably honestly make the book, or at least somewhere in the book, at least in like the abouts or something, where it's describing me being miserable working in TV. And I remember I was sending this to a couple of people, and they were like, "Oh, that intro is really good." And I was like, "Well, it wasn't fun to live through, but now I guess I can sell that I have gone through this really painful time." And basically, I can't remember the exact words, but it was like, I've probably been in your shoes. I've been miserable. I've spent a crap ton of money on something that I'm not doing anymore. Like, and that's happened to me a couple of times now, so maybe I'll figure that out at some point. But it's like finding those people that are like looking for misery,
Yeah.
and then creating content around that if you're comfortable enough with it.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think at least for me, there's this tendency to think if I'm not the best in the world at this, I shouldn't be online talking about it. But that's complete crap because really, yeah, we're all going to pay attention to those people that are the best in the world at this, like the Gary Vaynerchuks, the people that are just doing excellent stuff and putting it out there all the time. But I don't necessarily immediately relate to Gary Vaynerchuk because he is at this elite level. But somebody that's maybe like 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of me, they seem more approachable. Like I could run into this guy at a coffee shop or a bar and say, "Hey," and strike up a conversation and not have like awestruck, like star gazing, whatever you call that, where you're starstruck and you can't have a normal conversation with someone. So I think there's plenty of space for people that are just a few steps ahead of where they used to be to start talking about their story and not feel like they have to be the world's greatest expert to start.
I feel like you're coming out of your shell a little bit. I feel like I've known you for a few years now, and I feel like you are coming out of your shell. You are not that you were an internalizing person, if you will, but I feel like I'm seeing more of you do the things that I wasn't necessarily anticipating. Do you feel that's happening with you too?
Yeah, I definitely feel like that's happening. I For me, I'm my default is definitely a people pleaser. We talked about that for a second earlier. So I think I was always thinking, man, I've got to have everything together before I start pushing content out there. I've got to have a brand that is perfect. I've got to have the best looking demo reel that blows everything out of the water. Or else people are going to laugh at me. People are going to think, why is he out there sharing what he can do for people with video um, when he doesn't have this together or that together? And in actuality, I do have a lot of things together. I have been working on my skills for a very long time, and I've got something to offer in this space, and it's fine to be able to share that and know that some people are going to see me working with them as a great fit, and some people are going to say, "Hey, he doesn't fit with what we're trying to do," and that's totally okay. But I needed help getting over that.
And
I
how
needed like
and how
more
did
more
you?
reinforcement. Honestly, following people, listening to people talk about what's important in this world is that everyone has their own unique creativity, their own voice. There's some people I did a video production thing with really called Bright Ideas Company, and they are huge advocates of how everyone has a unique voice, and the world is only a great place when everyone shares their unique voice. Um,
That's what the book's about too, right? And even as I wrote it, I didn't realize this, but now reflecting back and looking at it, I was just telling you, I was talking with the publisher, and when we first sent them to here are the three kind of categories that we think that this book should be, they're all like marketing and business. And then as I really look back at it, I'm like, or having conversations with people, I'm like, hold on a second. This is not even really a business book. Like we say, and this is the way I like to describe it, we like to take business principles and put them into your life, because if you can understand how people, like from a psychological standpoint, think or are going through a sales funnel, right? Like you meet someone the first time, you're probably not going to date them, marry them without taking them through a funnel, right? And so that's the whole process. And so that we start the book with a sales funnel and saying, hey, like these people that you want their attention, this is how they take you. And so as I was talking to someone on the publisher team, they were like, so it's more of like a self-help book. And I was like, wow, that's really, really interesting, because I had just had another guest on the show, and I hate when I can't remember people's names. Oh, but you know what?
how many shows have you done now?
How many shows have I done now? I mean, a lot. Jeremy Ryan Slate basically was like, yeah, I took, and he has a pretty popular podcast called Create Your Own Life Podcast. Jeremy Ryan Slate, been able to connect with him a couple of times. He's pretty cool. But he was like, yeah, we just moved it from a business to self-help on the kind of podcast category thing. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Because around that same time is when I had this conversation with the publisher, and I was like, this is really more of a self-help book to get people out of their shells. And would you say unique voice? Like, I believe, just like Bright House Video, is that what it was?
Right. No, it's Bright Ideas
Bright Ideas.
Collective.
I
Yeah,
like
Bright
that.
Ideas Collective.
And so I believe that everyone loves something, and everyone has the skills to be seen. And now that these tools are so cheap, you really can get out there. And so one of the things that we talk about in the book is basically, hey, like figure out what you really love and start putting your voice on that, on a medium that you feel really comfortable with. And that medium could be a million different things. It could be video, Instagram, something like a podcast, it could be writing, it could be just doodling, it could be getting in front of people, whatever it is. And so that's powerful. So when did you get into video?
I actually went to school for it. I went to JMU and studied media arts and design there. So the whole program was based around like script writing and all of that. But I guess if you really want to talk about when did I get into video, I grew up skateboarding, and we were just grabbing like old big VCR cameras and running around trying to film tricks. There was like a local skate shop that had just moved into our neighborhood, or our town, and they were sponsoring kids. So everyone was trying to make a mad dash to make skate videos to get sponsored by this local shop. I think all you would have gotten was like a t-shirt, maybe, if you got sponsored. But we all thought it was so cool, and we were all rushing to make the coolest videos. And that's really where it started. There was another guy that was making skate videos. He was really good. And he would do these crazy tricks with graphics where he was zooming his camera into the TV on text and making these whirly spinny things. So it was way more involved than just capturing what actually was happening, the skate tricks. But he was also throwing on all these graphics and motion things that really enhanced it. That's when I first was like, wow, there's more than just what's on the surface level here.
How old are you?
I'm 35.
Oh, you're older than me. Okay.
Yeah.
So what did video? So VHS that we said you were shooting on VHS?
Yeah. So this was in like 1997 probably.
Wow.
Yeah. Shooting skate videos.
And then what'd you edit with?
VCRs. Like you would have to get two VCRs and like press play on one, record on the other, and then you could, while that was playing on the TV, you could take your camera that also recorded to a big VCR tape and like zoom in on the screen and twist. And if you got really close, you could get like these pixelating, rotating effect things. But yeah.
Wow. And people are complaining about stuff now. You went VCR to VCR edit. That's like when I first started editing. I can't remember what it was called, but it was small tapes, maybe like this, and you put it in, you edit, boom, like from one tape to another. That was a real pain in the tail.
The mini DV tapes, yeah.
Oh god, they were the worst. And then if you accidentally recorded over something that you weren't supposed to.
Oh yeah.
It didn't save. Like, kids got it easy these days, Chris. We had it hard.
They don't even know. They don't even know.
They don't even know. With Chris Lane. That's interesting. What is Chris Lane the best in the world at?
Oh my gosh. I really pride myself on being a people person. I like to build relationships with people. So even people that I'm working with, I don't want it to just be about, let's create this video. I'm a robot. You're a robot. Here's your video. Invoice done. But I think it's important to work on projects that you care about, that you see yourself gelling with the other person who's bringing you on to do the work. So for me, that relational aspect is what sets me apart.
Very cool. How did you meet me again?
I was working full time for a live streaming company where all we did was set up cameras and broadcast important live events. And I was based in DC, but my family was growing and we really wanted to make it back down to Hampton Roads. And I reached out to you just to get sort of like a lay of the land. Anytime I looked online about like what was happening in Hampton Roads, Zack Miller kept popping up. So I was like, I got to reach out to this dude. And I even reached out to like the Virginia Beach Economic Development, and they pointed me to you too. So I was like, this is definitely the dude to talk to. And you were like, hey man, anytime you need to know anything, or when you get down here, look me up, come hang out. We're doing stuff on Wednesdays at lunchtime where we, it's just a bunch of entrepreneurs. And so you're like super welcoming, open and sharing knowledge. And that's how we connected.
That's cool. I knew the story. I wanted other people to hear it because, so you had like this vision of, I want to get back to this place. And so you kind of took a directory or an inventory of like, who are the influencers or the people in the space that could potentially help me? And then you just decided to reach out?
Yeah. At first it was with helping grow this live streaming company out down in Hampton Roads. And they're just an awesome company, Spark Street Digital. And they were super supportive of me and my family moving down here. But yes, reaching out, figuring out what the lay of the land was like, what was happening, what people were interested in here, if there's a market for video, specifically live streaming at the time. And you were one of the resources I found that has still continued to be a resource to me today.
Bam! Still creating and providing value to Chris Lane since 2015.
Yeah, man.
Do you subscribe to this show?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that I do. Yeah.
So right after this, I'm going to go in and I'm going to edit something in and show, bing, he does or he doesn't. So we don't want you to be a liar here, Chris. No, I'm just.
All right.
You could. I'm sure you do.
You put me on the spot there.
I did that because you were talking about, I subscribe to these people to help me. And then, I don't know.
Yeah, that was good. Thanks for calling me out.
Dude, of course. I mean, that's what's fun. So are you from Harrisonburg? Where are you from?
I grew up in Williamsburg.
Oh.
So, yeah. The very northern part of Hampton Roads, if you will.
And then how'd you get to DC?
After school, I started. I grew up playing drums, and after college, like the end of college, I'd started playing music with some guys, and they were like, "Hey, instead of using our degrees, why don't we just like get a van, rent a house, and find a community where we can start playing tunes?" And that's how we made it to DC. It seemed like the closest place that could be a good home base for a band that wanted to make it as a pop rock act.
And how did that go?
We had a lot of fun writing and recording and driving up and down the East Coast playing dive bars and doing covers and original songs. It was a time in my life that I would not trade for anything. I learned a lot, even about production and recording and stuff, as well as just playing music and being part of a team.
Very cool.
But there came a point where it's like, is this something we want to keep doing, or do we all want to try something different? So we decided to try something different.
You talked about your experience working for a company. You did that collectively, what, for 10, 15 years? Not just with that company, but how long did you work for companies for?
Actually, only about 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
so I was doing the music thing and also working as a independent video producer in like the healthcare space while I was a musician in the DC area. So creating a lot of
to
like
pay the
patient
bills.
testimonials. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then you go and you take a position somewhere, you help that company grow. And then at some point you decide to transition out of employee to kind of business owner. What were some of the things that you went through to ultimately make that decision?
Yeah, gosh, that was a tough decision. I really valued the company I was working for. They really took care of their employees and gave them space to grow. Um, I think I just had this natural need to be creating all the time, and I kept like talking to my wife Lindsay. I was like, "Look, I feel like I'm missing something. I want to get back into making my own videos." So the first thing I did was I stayed working for the company, and then I started reaching out to people that I just thought were interesting. And the first person I did that for was a company called Norfolk Growler, and Brendan is the guy that I met actually at one of the Hatch events through you. And I said, "Hey man, I know you've got this growler company where they make porcelain beer growlers. I'd love to like just come get some footage of you guys, interview you about how you started this company, and create like a little mini 2-minute doc about what you're doing." So that started feeding my creative
For free?
hole for free. Yeah,
Okay.
for him, I did it for free because I had the full-time job still, and I was just like wanting to explore creating something and start pushing some content out on YouTube to see if people liked watching a behind the scenes of a company.
So trying to put your one foot in the door to start to get a feel of like, okay, is this
Yeah,
something that might have roots or something?
exactly.
Okay.
And it got a really, really great response. Everyone that was a part of that company was really appreciative, and actually, someone from a local cable station reached out and just was like, "Hey, are you interested in being a storyteller with us and maybe doing some projects?" And that was really inspiring and encouraging. And then I had another company, an off-roading company called Where to Wheel, that asked me if I would create a similar video for them. And that's when the wheels started turning and some traction seemed like it was there to be able to possibly think about doing this for a living and getting away from the more event style production that I was doing full time with Spark Street.
Yeah, Brittany and David Paragoff from Where to Wheel, they've been on the show as well. And I've seen that video, so it's pretty good. So then, okay, so you decide that, hey, like, it sounds like this is what I want to do. From a financial standpoint, how did you finally decide, like, hey, I'm making enough money to make this feasible?
So a little bit of that was a leap of faith. A lot of that was keeping really great relationship with Spark Street, the company I was with for full time before. They, while they're an events based company, also get some editing work in from time to time, and they were really kind and I guess feel like I was a good fit for editing some of their projects with their clients. So they sent me some of that work in addition to hiring me as a freelancer here and there to come and still produce events with them. So there was this overlap of me going out shooting my own creative projects, doing this new more documentary storytelling type thing for businesses and entrepreneurs while still having a great relationship with the company I was working for, and they were giving me work as a freelancer. So it wasn't like a big jump off the diving board, all in on the new thing for me.
Yeah, I think that's a bad strategy, right? I think you should do small little steps. So, and I know that you've always talked about really, really positive things about Spark Street, right? And I've met the founder there as well, and you've always been very gracious about them, and I think that's important, right? Never burn a bridge, right? I might have burned one bridge ever, But you know what? I don't care. That was the bridge that needed to be burned, so it's fine.
Man, I mean, I think I've definitely burned bridges in my life
Well, you were
too.
a musician, so you had to.
It's inevitable. That's true. Yeah, yeah. You gotta sometimes you just gotta drop the mic. Throw a drumstick out into the audience. It's the guy that keeps requesting Freebird.
It was during my TV times, Miserable, the news director. Just and maybe if she's listening because she's following me now, and I just don't know that. Like, I'm over it. Like, I don't worry about that. But I felt that she was a really poor leader, and she made me do some things that I've learned that no one else should have to go through. Basically, a lot of babysitting, and I was just like, I don't need to be babysat. Like, what? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm a grown man. Like, I know what I'm doing. Like, and I wasn't the only one that felt that way. And so,
like micromanagement sort of thing. Is that what you mean?
Oh,
like,
well, I got caught in a situation where I was told I did one thing, which is not true. And they took the other person's side of the story, and I had to basically check in with this lady every day to tell her what I did yesterday and what I was going to do today. Because this was the... I don't think I've ever told this story. So... So I get in trouble because I basically left early, which was not necessarily the case. It was after like a hurricane or something, and someone said, "Oh, you need to go edit this thing," and I was like, "Why am I editing that thing? I didn't shoot that video with that person. This other person who shot it should edit it. That was kind of the rule." And then they claimed that I left early or didn't get approval to leave early, which I had. It's been 10, 15 years now. I can't remember the full story. But then they were going to, I guess, fire me because of this, which was ridiculous because they were telling me that I was like the best that they had. But I apparently ticked someone off, whatever.
Oh, dude.
And then the Wayne, you know Wayne.
Yeah.
I believe Wayne went to this lady and was like, "You can't fire him. Like, he's too good and he's valuable to this team. Like, I would help bring on team members. I was the training person. Like, I did a lot of extracurricular things." And so I guess that my punishment was to stay in the same position, you know, but then literally go up to this lady every day and go, "Hi, it's me. This is what I am doing today." That's like, if you're watching this and you're in a leadership position or a management position, like, treat people with respect, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is like, I've gone through a lot of challenging things with my business, but I have always been as trans freaking parent as possible with the business, with the people on the business. And so if we're going through a rough time, I'm like, "Yo, we are going through a really rough time. We need to figure this out.
Yeah.
And if we don't figure this out, this is what's going to happen. You're going to get let go. We are going to do something different, like whatever it is." And respect people, like listen to people. And so, like, I don't know, I learned a lot in that situation, and I never want to go back.
Man, that sounds like a nightmare. I was super fortunate. Now hearing this story and other people's story, I think where I worked was maybe an anomaly, but
it's a good thing. More places should be like that.
Super encouraging of everyone, always like just looking out for his team and creating an awesome place to work. I think that was a unique situation from the stories I hear from other people.
One word or one way that I describe it is I go up to the team, and I actually haven't done this in a few weeks, so I need to do this. And I'll say, "Look, I know I'm not going to have you forever. I would love to have you for as long as possible. But whatever you want to be in life, I want to help you get to that. And I want to help guide you or be a positive thing on that. Yeah. And, tell me what that is so I can help you get there." And so...
you guys are like, you sound very like-minded to the way he ran Spark Street, runs Spark Street. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I want people to do what they want to do in life. And if that can be with me, that's great. But if not, like, let's help you get there. So one challenge with video is that it's not really indexed in the same way that copy is on a website. Is that going to change at some point in the future, do you think? Or how can people today really start getting what that video says into kind of the indexed places like a search engine?
That's interesting. I mean, if you look at YouTube, for instance, right now it automatically auto captions every video if you want it to. You can turn captions on. They're not perfect, but they're pretty close. And even now, like on social media, if you're looking at a video on Twitter, people have embedded what they're saying on there. So like as you're scrolling, because everybody's watching in silent mode most of the time, and those are coming up. So the fact that all these text things are happening, it makes it super easy for the text from a video to become a blog post. Um, and I think it makes it much more indexable. So I feel like that just opens the door for a ton of potential ways for things to be more easily searchable, more easily found. But it also means that there's going to be tons and tons more content in the same space fighting for attention.
Yeah, that's very true. Give me like video 101. Like, what are best practices?
Story, content, have that super solid. I think that's number one. What you're talking about or what you're showing through the video needs to be engaging, whether it's something that's going to help someone, make someone laugh, or have someone relate to what you're doing. That's number one. After that, I mean, I think you just need to present it in a way that people can take in. So that for me is like I always think about length. What is people's attention? What are people's attention span? And that varies based on the content and how interesting something is, and also the way you tell a story. Like if you lead with something that is intriguing, like a question, or you don't quite give away what people want to know, but you've piqued their interest, and then later you give it to them. You can have a longer video, and then also people need to be able to understand it. So the audio specifically needs to be something that's not annoying to listen to, and then it's great if you can make that the best sounding thing. And then lastly, I think video is important. I mean, a video can be really compelling if it has great audio and bad lighting, but a video with great lighting and bad audio is no, nobody wants to watch that.
Right. So like you right now, like if people are watching, like you sound great but look terrible.
Yes, and I did that just to prove this point.
Exactly. I love it. Making points, making it rain. I've never done that on the show. There's a first. Love it. Interesting. So I think the average YouTube video is 4 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, they have that search filter, of course, 4 minutes or less.
Oh, really? I never knew that.
Yeah, it's a great way to try to like weed out super long videos that you don't want showing up in your search results.
So when do you start making long videos then?
I think when you have an audience that's invested in that, or you're telling a longer story that deserves that amount of time. Maybe you're creating shorter videos that are 15 seconds on social media or 30 seconds or a minute, but then they're pointing back to this big project that someone who's invested because they saw your shorter promotional clips wants to see the full story. That's a longer piece.
So in like a case like this where we're telling a longer form story, it's appropriate, you would say?
I think so because you have people that are invested in what you're doing because you've spent time building relationships, proving to people that you have value. So they will tune in for a longer amount of time because they know that there's going to be great bits throughout the piece that they will take away.
I would call them amazing bits.
Amazing bits. Yeah.
So we've been
anomalies.
Exactly, a series of anomalies. So we've been talking for a little bit. What's your blah? What is your headline for this show so far? Like if you were to put this together in a headline as like one of the things that's important for this, like what's the headline that you would use?
Wow. Something along the lines of like creating video in real life. Not some lofty idea of this grand cinematic vision or this uninteresting, poorly recorded thing that isn't beneficial to you, but just how can you make video work as a tool for what you're doing and do it consistently in a way that grows an audience and builds trust with people.
Interesting. So you would say creating video in real life, not a story or a piece of something that you said and pull that out as something really exciting?
In regards to this podcast, is there something that we touched on? You're saying?
Yeah,
Like
yeah. So like, bald man finds confidence in Noah Kagan or something. Like I know that
that's a great title, actually.
I'm gonna write that down.
I think that will get a lot of clicks, probably just from like bald dudes, but.
Oh God. I am gonna go with that. Usually we go with name, business, and the number. Actually, we'll probably still do that too. But the headline will be "Bald Man Finds Confidence from Noah Kagan." And you know what? Maybe that will get Noah to come on the show.
You know what? It could happen.
Well, I know it'll happen. I've never asked him. I mean, he responds to my emails. No, I just
who's the person that you want to ask the most to be on your show that you haven't given the ask to?
So that's an interesting thing. So I would say the number one or two people on my list of people to meet, I would love to have them on the show too. And so that's Vince McMahon, number one.
Nice.
Okay. Vince, I got the belts. Come on, buddy. Let's do this. Number two would be The Rock, because The Rock is just incredible, right? And so sure, I like wrestling, and I picked two people. But three would be my grandfather that passed away that I never met, just because I thought it would be interesting to meet this person that my mom says that I would really enjoy. So that would be interesting. So at least one of those is unobtainable because they're passed, and so Vince is going to die at some point. So hopefully I can get him before he does. I'm not afraid to ask certain people, but I do know that certain people are looking for certain requirements first, and I want to make sure that I'm in that minimum threshold to get that result, right? So I've had people on that I just reached out to. I'm like, yo, I like what you're doing. I just learned about you. Would love to have you on the show. There was a guy that I met a few weeks ago. I just saw his tweet, and he takes these... what is it called? Still animated videos. Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm. Cinemagraphs?
The stop motion graphics or stop motion videos. Mm-hmm. So it's like it just moves something like really, really quick with like these miniatures. And I just saw his tweet, or I saw like a video or something. I was like, oh, I like that. And I reached out to him, and he's got a decent following. And I was like, hey, I like what you're doing. I'd like to have you on the show. I've reached out to Grant Cardone recently. And I guess we're talking. I've asked Gary Vaynerchuk a couple of times. He every once in a while responds. I don't know. Like those are not. I want to find someone that's super unique, and those people are great, and I appreciate them and I respect them. But I don't think that they're not anomalies in that case. Like they do that a lot. I'd like to find someone that maybe I haven't found yet that doesn't talk a lot, that doesn't get that story out. And I'd like to be able to tell that story, right? Like with you, like you don't tell your story a lot. A lot of people are learning about things that they don't know about you. And so to me, that's really the premise of the show. The premise of the show is finding the people that don't ever get their stories out, or even if they do, how do I get the stories out about them that no one talks about? So, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't have to be a famous person or something like that. TBD. But Vince, if you're listening, let's go.
No, that's good. That's really unique, I think, to your show, trying to find the people that aren't maybe sharing as much. Maybe they're a little more introverted, but they've got these unique ideas or points of view that you're trying to make a little more public. So
I would say around episode 50. So what? We're around 100 now. Or maybe after 100. After 50, I started listening to this thing that people were saying. Like, they kept saying, oh, that's a good question. Oh, that's a good question. Oh, I've never thought about that before. And I was like, huh. Are they saying I'm a good interviewer? Are they saying I'm asking good questions? And that's when it kind of spun. And I was like, huh. And then so I interviewed someone the other day, and every time that not every time, but a lot of times I asked him a question, he kept going like this, like it wasn't easy to answer. And I just questioned him. I was like, am I asking tough questions? And he's like, well, you're asking what no one else is asking.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
I think so too.
So when you're talking to someone, how do you do that? How do you get that same effect out? How do you create content or create videos or ask questions that no one else is asking?
That's good. For me,
I just did it. I just got it. I just got it out of you.
I think for me, I have to listen first and find out something about what's going on with them, or where they're headed, or what they're passionate about, before I can form a question. But most oftentimes, it's a simple question, which is why? Like, why is this important to you? Why did you choose to do this? And then that response often will pique another question of like, oh, you did this because when you were 17, you were making a skate video because you thought you wanted to be a pro skateboarder, and getting sponsored by the local shop was going to help you do that. Okay, cool. Now I have another question where I can go in a little bit deeper with you. So I think letting things naturally evolve, as opposed to thinking I've got to plan every single question out ahead of time. I think it's good to have a plan, but then be open to having that plan evolve when you're questioning.
Very cool. So is your why in that case still the same? Like I mean, I know you said that you started getting into this because it was when you were a kid skateboarding and video, but as that evolved, like, is that different now, or do you still like reminisce and reflect back on those days?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Skateboarding was a lot of fun, and it was I love doing it. But I was just a kid having fun, you know. The theme that has been consistent throughout all of this for me is that stories are really how we communicate with each other. It's like really how we build relationships. It's the heartbeat of everything from person to person. Whether you're listening to your grandfather tell you something in a living room, whether you're watching a documentary, whether you're following someone that you relate to on YouTube, a vlogger, or you're just checking out videos that are coming across your Twitter feed or Instagram. It's all the same thing. Underlying, we tell people stories, and that's how we connect with each other. So I think I'm most passionate about stories and finding out what's going on with someone, because it's a way to relate to people. And for me, video is an excellent tool for that, because you can craft the imagery and the sound differently than just looking at your grandpa in a room telling you a story. Sometimes that is what you want to see and hear, but other times you can change the imagery and the sound in ways to create a whole new tale, which is a lot of fun.
Do you have a Netflix membership?
Yeah.
Do you do you see what some of the things that they're doing and that you see other videographers do, and you try and figure out how to do that yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Like, so for instance, last night I woke up and I couldn't sleep at like 2 a.m, and I started watching comedians in cars getting coffee. Have you ever seen this?
I've heard of it. I haven't watched it.
It's Jerry Seinfeld. He like goes and gets all these great comedians, and then he rents some super old car that he feels like is in some way descriptive of the person he's about to interview. And then there's just like GoPros in the corners of all the car, and they're crammed in this little like VW Golf or something you've never heard of that doesn't even have seatbelts, and they're driving around New York City, and then they stop at some random coffee shop. And actually the camera work is good, but the actual cameras and colors, if you look at it, it's not as crisp and clean looking as a well-produced show. But the content is awesome because it's these epic people that are just being real, grabbing a coffee in some dive joint and laughing and telling silly jokes and just playing off each other. It's completely unscripted, and
it's genuine.
Yeah. Speaks really highly to the fact what we were talking about earlier. It's not always about making sure that everything's super polished before you put it out there, but it's just going out there, starting a conversation, telling a story, and capturing it.
Yeah, $300 camera goes a long way.
Yep.
So this was interesting. I learned this recently, that when Netflix and I guess Amazon, all these other OTT networks are over-the-top networks are creating content or seasons, they're doing it to be binged.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting to me. So in TV world, like, you're creating a season, and let's just say it's 12 episodes, and let's just say it's 52 minutes or 45 minutes, whatever that thing is, without commercials. Mm-hmm. And they know that week after week, you're going to go back and create this thing. And so they've created content, or they're scheduling content that they are marketing towards on a weekly basis. Now, Netflix and these other platforms are creating content that gets consumed in 1 or 2 kind of binge moments. Is that a different style, you think? Or do you think it's just easier for people to binge because they've wanted to be able to consume that way forever? Like, do you think that thing is actually changing? They're actually creating content in a different way that in the show is actually creating upsell to the next?
Yeah, I think in a way, you're absolutely right. I think maybe it started off as, okay, now we're going to remove the commercials and people can have access to the episodes whenever they want. And then from that, it was like, all right, now people can flip to whatever show they want anytime. We've got to up the level of storytelling here, or we've got to introduce more things that make them want to immediately watch the next show. So I think you're totally right. Well, what are there any shows that you binge on right now?
Okay, so
where you feel like that's super evident?
Well, I had read something about Netflix maybe 3 to 6 months ago where they blatantly said we are creating to binge. And that made me just think, wow, that's really just interesting. I think a lot of the shows that I've watched throughout time, I had to watch from a weekly basis, and that just sucked because you have to think back. Like, one of my favorite shows of all time is Lost. It's probably my favorite show of all time. But I had to watch it, for 7 years, 1 hour at a time, over and over and over again. And that's so different. So I do not like to consume a lot of content like this, because I'm very habitual and I will do exactly what they want me to do. I will watch it straight through. So recently I started, I'm going to the gym, and this bike that I'm riding doesn't have a TV associated with it. So I can't watch like sports or something like that. And so I was like, oh, well, let me just start bringing my iPad and I'll start downloading episodes on Netflix or something. And so the first thing I downloaded was a Lance Armstrong documentary, and I just felt that it was really funny that here I am riding a bike watching Lance Armstrong and whatever he did. But I started watching Stranger Things, which is something that a lot of people have told me to watch, but I'm like, no. And I watched it in a few days, basically, because I'll go on these long bike rides. But that's a show that people like get it and then watch through. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Have you watched that show?
I have not watched Stranger Things. Is it creepy?
No, but I think that, and I think I talked about this on one of my Zack Miller lives. Like, you have to be cautious when you're doing something that is on a topic that isn't maybe mainstream. So sci-fi in many ways is not mainstream to everybody, and ultimately that's what this show is about. And so I believe that through nostalgia of late 80s, 90s stuff or early 80s stuff, there's excitement there. And then really storytelling quickly to get people in, and then opening the doors saying, oh, there's some weird stuff with this. It's not creepy at all. But it's pretty good. Yeah, but it's that storytelling is important. And I think you got to do it.
Yeah. So what were you hitting at with the binge thing? Like the concern about what is this doing?
Not
to
the concern, but how does someone that's watching create bingeable content? Like, how do you create content that get people to stay on there when their attention is everywhere, right? So, we've talked about a couple of people, but how do you stay on those channels and create bingeable things so that they're watching just like a Netflix would be?
Yeah, I think you have an idea of a story. And then you figure out where the specific areas that you can dive deep on. Like, before we started talking, we were talking about your video. It's a great video that we did for the Anomaly book, and it worked well. It was a perfect length. But we were saying, what you could have done is you could have created a similar video and dove deeper on some of the topics and made it into 4 videos and released it over time, and each one lead into what the next topic is going to be. So I think that's like the very, very rudimentary basic version of how you start to think about creating bingeable content.
That's good. What's something about you that I haven't asked that most people do ask?
Oh my gosh. How do I get my head so smooth? That's what somebody asked me at the gas station. I bought gas a couple days ago and went inside and grabbed a soda, and the lady was like, your head's really clean. Like how do you do that? Do you go to a barber every day? And I was like, no, it's just Dollar Shave Club. It's cocoa butter, pretty good. Yeah.
Plug of the day, Dollar Shave Club. Get your $6 razor. They are not a sponsor, but if you want to be, call me.
Good
They have
deal.
good videos. That's what really put them on the map.
You know what? I have not checked out their
Yes,
videos.
you have.
I'm
You've
gonna
never
give it.
seen their.
No, no. I get the pamphlet, and
Oh,
the
their
pamphlet that
first
comes every month.
video was incredible. Really? You've never seen this?
I've never seen a Dollar Shave Video Club.
Okay, go
Dollar
to
Shave. Yeah.
go find the first one. So it's like a walking thing where they walk through and do a bunch of crazy stuff. Oh, it's fantastic. You'll like it.
I gotta check it out. I'll do that.
I hope you do. If someone is interested in video, but maybe on the fence, how do you sell them that video is the future?
I think you just say go online and look around. Or you even say when you're looking to find something, a service, you have a question about something you're going through, and you maybe you go to Google and type something in. What are you doing? Are you naturally drawn to someone that's got a video about it on YouTube? I mean, for me, yeah, and I think the answer is yeah for the majority of people in today's society. That's what we're doing. So when you can see and hear someone or something talking about an experience that's relatable to you, that is where you're going to continue to go back to as the source for your answers.